Friday, March 3rd, 2023. Welcome to a new backcountry snowpack summary brought to you by North Shore Rescue. What a week it's been since the last time we talked. We added almost a full meter of snow. The skiing throughout the week was absolutely spectacular. I often put a little bit of ski footage in those videos, but the skiing was so good this week that I just couldn't be bothered to stop. It did, however, come with some pretty spicy avalanche condition, especially last weekend on the Sunday. There was a couple of reports on the Min of avalanches, some of them voluntary, others were maybe a little bit more of a close call. And since then, the avalanche activity has diminished. The new snow is settling quite nicely. However, we still have some questions about that crust that was close to the surface last week. We did have 2 calls yesterday close to Cypress Mountain. Now, I'm not someone who's going to tell you what to do and what not to do, and I don't want to get into too much detail about these events. But I will say this, however, is that when you're going out in high avalanche hazard, essentially you're walking into a cave with the intent of poking a sleeping dragon with your ski pole. If something goes sideways and you're calling for help from inside the cave, you might not be very surprised when people are not exactly rushing in. So when we do have to respond to complex terrain and the hazard rating is high, it does significantly increase the complexity of the response for us, and also limits quite a bit the personnel who can respond to these events. Which certainly makes for more complex and lengthier rescues. And one thing that I will say, however, is if you do go out in high avalanche hazard and you're pushing the envelope a little bit, transceiver, probe, and shovel is not quite enough. Be equipped with first aid equipment and first aid knowledge. And also a very important thing is something that will allow you to move your patient to a different location. And that is hugely helpful for crews if you can actually get out of challenging terrain or complex terrain into a place that's a little bit safer for the crew to get in and assist you. Now, we do have some uncertain weather coming this weekend and a questionable layer of crust with a little bit of rounding facets above and below it. So if you want to know more about the snowpack, stick around for the snowpack discussion. We're on a northwest aspect at 1,200 meters, and I guess the dominant feature in the snowpack this week is this crust here. So if you watched last week, this crust was only about 10 centimeters under the surface. So this is the snow we received this week. In this area here, we have 90 centimeters sitting on the crust. And if you remember, it was cold the week previously, and the snow above and below the crust was faceted. And we did have a little bit of a concern as to how quickly that would heal. Now, all of this snow was really good quality and it actually healed quite rapidly. So this 90 centimeters here is pretty well settled, but we still have some concerns about this crust here above and below the crust. We appear to have weaknesses. Now, where this gets a little bit scary is that we'll have nice consolidated snow on top here that offers pretty decent bridging. It's actually pretty difficult to trigger something down there, so you would need a large trigger, but something like a sunny afternoon could potentially do it, because it certainly does still produce test results a little bit inconsistent, so it does seem like it's actually gaining strength. Another encouraging sign is that those rounding facets that we find on either side of the crust, they're not very big, so big crystals tend to take longer to stabilize. Smaller crystals are a little bit faster, so that's good. Underneath that, another 30 to 40 down, like 130 centimeters down in this profile, we have the crust of that rain event from February 13. We haven't really seen anything happening with this crust in quite some time, so it's maybe a lesser concern. So we get into this situation where the avalanche hazard is probably going to start to decrease with the weather forecast that we have for the coming weekend, but we still have a weakness that is fairly unusual for the North Shore, and that probably requires a little bit more caution. The weather is quite unstable these days, and sometimes you have these unexpected sunny breaks. And so I would be extremely careful if we do get a lot of sunshine and the sun is starting to pack a bit more of a punch now that we're into March. So I would definitely question whether or not I trust this, and probably reel back my terrain choices a little bit. That's all I got for this week. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you next week.